did bring a little bit of America to England with us. And I'm quite sure that the other 30 or 40 bomb groups and fighter squadrons through the UK had the same kind of experiences that we had at Grafton Underwood.
These young men coming in with this gorgeous American accent, which we'd only heard on the screen, took us all by surprise, and their uniforms were much better than our forces' uniforms. They had the chewing gum and American cigarettes. In fact, it was just completely different from anything we'd ever seen before.
The warmth and the friendly reception that we're given by the English people, you don't get that anywhere else in the world. There's a mutual admiration society down there in Grafton Underwood, and we love every blade of grass, every person, everything that's there.
Grafton Underwood in Northamptonshire has a population of 96, including a gentleman living at the general store cum post office, who as a hobby organises film shows in the village hall. The audiences are largely male, but the movies are black and white, not blue, and the place is packed.
We've been putting these film shows on now for 4 years, about every 6 weeks, and it never ceases to amaze me the turnouts we get at these. These are World War II combat films, which probably you would never ever see anywhere else. And really, it's only by word of mouth that they get to know about these films, because to be honest, if we advertise them, we'd never cope with the numbers.
We've come down from Lincoln tonight, specifically for this meeting. 3 of us are actually military vehicle preservationists, so we have general interest in everything military, but a specific interest in the 8th Air Force.
This village must have almost been part of an Air Force station, you know, an American Air Force station. Did the American crew members sort of really understand the English village people, village life at that time, you know?
If the Americans hadn't come over here 40 odd years ago, we wouldn't be sitting here now, we wouldn't be able to come to things like this.
Well, I do like war, and I played at home, and when my dad told me about it, I thought it would be a nice change for me to come.
Below this formation of American flying fortresses, there lies Marienburg in East Prussia. The specific target on which this lead bombardier is lining up his bomb site is the Focke-Wulf 190 plant. Up to this instant, this aircraft factory has been accounting for almost 50% of Germany's total FW-190 fighter assembly. Arms away. Tons of bombs rain down in a tight pattern of destruction. This, remember, is no area attack. It is an assault on one single target, and any bomb that falls outside that target has failed to achieve its purpose. The assembly of fighters in this Focke-Wulf factory has come to a sudden and violent end.
May 1983, and Memorial Junket 4 is underway at the Leicester Holiday Inn. Since 1967, the survivors of the 384th Bombardment Group and their wives have been holding regular reunions. This year is the 4th time the junket has been held in England.
My husband died 2 years ago, and he was the vice president with the 384th Bomb Group. And when he came home, he said, when I saw the curtain open for my last mission, I thought, I'm never going to see you again, honey, because the curtain went all across the room, and they went to East Prussia. And it was the longest run that they had made from that base. But he came back, had 2 beautiful daughters and a good life.
Some of these people haven't seen each other for 40 years, or 39, so it really is a wonderful opportunity for them to get together and talk over their old war wounds.
The 384th took over Grafton Underwood airfield from the RAF on the 5th of July 1943. All over the eastern counties of England, similar ceremonies were enacted as the US 8th Air Force built up its strength for the daylight precision attacks on German-occupied Europe, and which would complement the RAF area night bombing campaign.
My first raid was to Stuttgart, which was deep, deep in Germany. And we were being led that day by a General Bob Travis. And the word immediately got out that this was the first mission that he'd ever led. Well, that scared the hell out of us, too. Anyhow, we took off, and we got to Stuttgart, and by mistake, we did not make a good bomb run. And all of a sudden, we got the word, we're going to do it again, and we circled over that target twice. That was unheard of. But we did, and we did drop our bombs. The problem was getting home, because Stuttgart's a long way in. When we got down, the first thing I did was kiss the damn runway, because when we landed, we completely used up the whole runway and went off the end. We'd had our brakes shot out. We had 140 holes in that airplane. They took us into briefing or debriefing, and they always gave us a shot of whiskey. I think they gave me about 4 shots that particular debriefing. I needed them.
Early in the war, thousands of children had been evacuated from the major British cities to escape German bombing. And some found themselves in small towns like Kettering, 4 miles from Grafton Underwood.
I was 9 when I came to Kettering, which was the 1st of September 1939, 2 days before war broke out. I was evacuated here from Kentish town, London. By the time I was 13, 1943, Kettering had developed into something of a real Wild West town. It lacked only the bat-wing doors and horses of the old movies to be exactly that. There were literally hundreds of people of all different types and nationalities and uniforms to be found in the town. It was always packed.
We were notices about, here are the Yanks, overpaid, oversexed, and over here. And I looked at this and I went home and I thought I was being so grown up, and I said to Mother, well, what about when our soldiers are overseas? Are they always so saintly? And I got the most terrific box of the ear.
The very first thing that impressed you was how smart they looked. I mean, the smartness, I think, really brought it home to you. If people could look this smart, they must have things. They must have possessions. And since possessions of any sort were very eagerly sought after, very short supply of things were then, the opportunity came that you must try and find some means of getting a little bit of their possessions from them.
I reckon I spent more time on the airfield than I did at school. I used to get a beating at least once a week for being absent from school, but there was much more interesting things going on there. History was being made, but I saw the opportunity to trade eggs for cigarettes and candy and things. In fact, one of my customers used to want 6 contraceptives for a dozen eggs. I used to do this trade for him quite often as well.
Got any gum, chum? How you started with them. And from gum, you were able to sort of progress and work towards other things. Cigarettes, money, tins of fruit, biscuits, chocolate bars. In fact, anything the Americans had, you tried hard to take from them, or not take, as to encourage them to part with them.
They just love kids. I think possibly it's because they was away from their own families anyway, and most of them just sort of fell in love with all the kids that were around. It may have been a means to an end, in as much as if you can get hold of the younger brother, you may get hold of the older sister.
I guess you were about 4 years old when I first met you. Your mom and dad were always so great. They had boys in there. There was almost never just one. There were always several, and they were all ranks. And it was just a warm, cozy place. It was great. It was great. And we've been maintaining correspondence over the years, and that's been great, too.
I remember climbing onto your lap and sitting bouncing there, and I remember lots of uniforms and singing songs that you used to teach me.
Pistol
Packing Mama, shoot that buzz bomb down, baby.
Shoot that buzz bomb down.
Yeah.
I can remember
Well, I used to get threatened every time I sang it.
So we heard it often.
That's right.
It gradually dawned on the chaps when there were perhaps 5 of them come at once on a Sunday that they were digging into our weekly rations. So they started to bring little things from their PX, which was like our naffy. There were tins of Spam and fruit juice and tins of peaches and so on, which we enjoyed thoroughly. But after emptying the tins, of course, in case anybody ratted on us and were a bit nasty about it, like seeing in the dustbin, Father ceremoniously buried the tins in the garden.
I recall going into one of the green groceries, and the cheese in the window looked very appetizing. Having money to spare, we were going to buy a pound or so of it, and we're told in no uncertain terms there's a war going on, such things as coupons, and he did give us a little bit of a taste, and we bought a green apple. It was quite an experience. The war really came home to us in those first few days, in terms of what the English citizen was putting up with and what he was doing without.
In day raids on Europe and other theaters of war, the flying fortresses of the United States Army Air Force have distinguished themselves. By these pictures, we may analyze their defensive equipment. The eye of the newsreel cameraman travels over a B-17 in flight, picking out the gun positions which make these gun-bristling aircraft the terror of enemy fighters. In the nose are 3 of the total 12 guns mounted. In the Sperry turret are 2.50 guns which can be brought to bear over a wide area. Behind this is another dorsal gun in the top decking. Beneath the fuselage is the ball turret. To port and starboard are the waist guns, .50 caliber guns, each weighing 70 pounds apiece. And in the tail is a kick like the hind end of a mule. Formation flying tactics make it possible for an attacker to be met with a concentrated hail of bullets from every direction.
No matter how much armor they put on it, no matter how many machine guns and cannons, you still needed fighter support. I flew 8 missions without, and the losses were just terrible.
It was normal for the new crews to fly what we call low Charlie. He was the lowest plane in the formation, and he was the last plane in the formation.
Enemy fighters, 11 o'clock high.
And if the fighters came in from the rear, he was the first one that saw the 20-millimeter cannons booming at him, and it was a dangerous position.
Another 1 o'clock high. Coming level to 3. I got him. The first flak. Just harmless-looking, silent puffs of smoke. Only each puff is a shell exploding, throwing shrapnel around the sky. Where will the next one hit? You try not to be there.
Flak is the thing that bothers the most. You feel fighters you can do something with, but all you can do is try and get very small when there's the black bursts around you and you hear the bees whispering through the aircraft.
When you flew in the nose, you could see what happened to the planes that were blown up by the flak, because that's probably where a lot of aircraft were lost when the flak hit the bombs and then the aircraft was blown up. When the bombs left the aircraft, I don't really think you gave it a lot of thought what they fell on. You were just relieved that they were gone. In later years, when you see the devastation and the terrible things the bombs did to the country concerned, it really made you think what bombing is all about.
The Germans were famous for coming right at you
with the sun right in your eyes, and that way you'd lose them right in the sun, and then he'd just be a little speck up there.
The 20-millimeter cannons that the Germans fired at us, they looked like big oranges, and they would come at you and disappear to the side. And we got quite good, you know, even though we were flying in tight formations. We reached the point where we could take evasive action, and we wouldn't even endanger the plane next to us.
2 fighters, 6 o'clock up, coming in, diving out, Chief.
B-17 in trouble out at 2 o'clock, watching.
Got an engine on fire. There's 2 more diving through the 94th.
3 planes, 9 o'clock, coming around. Keep your eye on them, boy.
Come on, you guys, get out of that plane. Bail out. There's one. He come out of the bomb bay.
Yeah, I see him.
There's a tail gunner coming out.
Watch out for fighters.
The 19th day of September, 1944, we got jumped by a couple of fighters being out of formation. We couldn't stay with them. We were hit pretty badly. We had to feather one of these engines. Number 1 out there was on fire. There was some difficulty getting the man out of the ball turret because they had to cut him out. He left part of his leg in it. That's nasty. But we got everyone out of the aircraft. Then I wondered how I'm going to get out. Every time I'd turn it loose, it'd want to make a roll. Well, these things are pretty hard to get out of, flying straight and level. Climbed out of the seat, still hanging on to the control yoke. Jumped down the navigator's escape hatch, and that's where I went out of this little feller. The thing blew up in the air. It couldn't have been 15, 20 seconds after I got out, because I felt the concussion while I was hanging in that chute.
It was about noon on a beautiful, clear day, and I free fell as far as possible before pulling my chute because we were told to do that so the Germans couldn't follow us down. As I approached the ground, I saw that I was on the edge of a small village, and there was a lone building a few hundred yards out from the village, surrounded by people, and I thought, my God, there are the Germans waiting to get me. But as I got closer, I saw that they weren't Germans at all. They were school children, and that was a schoolhouse that I was looking down at. I picked the perfect place to land. It was a freshly plowed field, and again, how lucky can you get? But I did the most stupid thing I did the whole 4 months I was in France. I started to run toward the woods with my parachute, and I just dropped it on the ground and continued running. I was scared and frightened, and I just wasn't thinking. But as I got to the edge of the woods, I turned around, and that school teacher had sent those children out to pick up that parachute, and they were dragging the parachute back to the schoolhouse. So 20 minutes later, when the Germans got out there in their lorries and their motorcycles, I was hidden in the woods, and the parachute was hidden in the schoolhouse.
At briefing, we were given silk maps covering the area we may be traveling over. The underground provided me with identity card and work papers, naturally forged, but that the German patrols would accept. The photographs on the identity papers we carried with us as part of our kit to aid the underground.
The B-17 had evolved over a long period of time, and it was just a great flyable airplane. I don't know how many times we came home from missions with 1 or 2 engines out, and it stayed in the air. One time, of course, we lost the last engine on final approach, and that was the first time in the history of the 8th Air Force that they had to change 4 engines on one airplane that actually landed and got on the ground, and luckily I got a DFC for that one.
You probably should pull those props.
Sally B is the only B-17 still flying in Europe. She's privately owned and is stabled at Duxford Airfield near Cambridge, together with the Imperial War Museum collection of historic aircraft.
Believe it or not, I used to be able to pull myself out through the pilot's window.
You've got to
on a ditching procedure.
I don't think you ever that thing. I don't think I could ever make that again.
I believe you could if you gave it a good try.
What are you getting red in the face for?
Thanks, Ted.
It's the only way. I know I couldn't do it. Aluminum, if it stays on a ground too long, it shrinks. The door got smaller. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. That's good looking at the old ship again, though.
Oh, yeah.
I'd still like to fly it.
To many, the bombing of Germany probably seems to be little more than a series of capricious adventures. One attack unconnected...
This wartime propaganda film understandably plays down the casualties suffered by American heavy bomber crews. Like their night bombing colleagues in RAF Bomber Command, they flew many missions from which scores of aircraft and hundreds of men did not return. On 2 occasions during the second half of 1943, the Americans lost 60 bombers in attacks without fighter escort over Germany. During the second of these raids, the 305th Bomb Group, based at Chelveston, a few miles from Grafton Underwood, lost 13 out of 15 aircraft. On the base that day was a British Air Training Corps cadet who had reported for his usual instruction.
As the day dragged on, the usual atmosphere of the base seemed to melt. Everything went very quiet, and people were solemn. There was an air of sadness hanging over the base even before the bad news was ever known. Us lads in the ATC, we felt very, very humble and upset at this occasion. And the hangar over there where we used to keep the bicycles, we just wandered around, got on our bicycles and went back to Rusden feeling very saddened that the men that some of us knew and had flew with probably on some Sunday afternoons had fallen over on German soil.
Now, in the order that we'll call you, stand up, fellas. All the pilots. Let's go. Stand up. Bombardiers, please stand up. Now, everybody else stand up. Come on, let's stand up.
The last night of Memorial Junket 4, and to most of the ex-air crew called to their feet, death must seem reassuringly more distant than it appeared to be 40 years before. The 384th motto was, and still is, keep the show on the road. And for every man flying, there were at least 10 on the ground doing just that.
The working day begins, as it will end, with the ground crews, as much a part of the fortress as her wings. If you're a mechanic, you've got your own bomber. You get attached to it. But you know when your ship goes out on a mission, you may never see it again. So you do your work as well as it can be done, perfectly. Because you wouldn't want anything to go wrong that would be your fault.
Sometimes it wasn't real easy to get that plane ready for the next day. You worked hard during that night, and the only sleep that you got is while that plane was gone. And then you had to keep somebody on watch for that plane in case it did have to board, because an airplane was mechanical. It could have failures in the air. It could be perfect when it left the ground, and 5 minutes after it left the ground, it could have something go wrong with it.
1 in every 6 aircraft lost by the 384th in the 2 years they flew from Grafton Underwood was destroyed as a result of ground accidents and mid-air collisions over England. Crowded airspace, adverse weather conditions, and the inexperience of air crews were all contributory factors.
The thing that I found the most difficult to cope with was taking off from the runway with a 50-foot ceiling and then breaking out maybe at 6,000 feet. And at the same time, of course, your neighbors are taking off, doing the same thing, and all hoping that you don't chew the tail off of the one ahead of you, or the one behind you doesn't chew your tail off.
I looked up and I saw a fortress flopping out of the clouds with the tail section missing, and before I could ask myself what had happened to it, there was another fortress about a quarter of a mile or so over there in a similar condition that came flopping out of the clouds. I fixed my eyes on the first fortress, and it straightened, as in I watched it as it straightened out, and it dived nose first with the engines roaring away into the valley just there. And then there was this violent explosion, which was the bomb's explosion which caused this crater. The sky seemed full of small pieces of debris. I looked in this area over here and I counted 5 parachutes descending. And as I went home, I went up by the cross and I saw an American airman in flying kit, which I assumed to be one of the survivors, and to my eternal regret, I didn't even speak to him.
The worst accident I remember was an airplane had an engine on fire, and he was coming in, and I don't know what happened, but somebody gave the order to jump, and they were on final approach, and they weren't high enough to jump.
One fella jumped out, I think he'd be 150 foot up, and he finished up with his parachute hanging in the oak tree. So I collared my ladder and run down the wood and went up and cut him down. Of course, he was pleased, and he hadn't hurt himself, just scratched his leg through the tree. And then we come back up here. One had jumped out just actually here, dropped through the hut. He went through with his legs and knocked the wireless off. And he hadn't hurt himself.
And the third man out of the aircraft, there was not enough time for his chute to open. So I was watching and watched him hit the ground. And when he hit the ground, he bounced 50 to 60 feet in the air the first time. And then he came down and bounced again, 40 to 50 feet in the air. And then when he came down the third time, he landed on the walk path, which was cement.
We really didn't realize what the attrition rates could be and were, but it wasn't long after that we damn well knew what they would be. We knew our chances were slim. I'll give you a perfect example. We had a flying officer's mess and a ground officer's mess. I refused to eat in the flying officer's mess because I didn't know anybody. They were gone. The ground officers, I knew them. All I was interested in was flying my missions and getting them over with and going home. That's what everybody thought about.
We were all of us scared. You don't get shot at and not be frightened. You don't have artillery thrown at you and not be frightened. Fortunately, we have been endowed with something in our mind that you eventually become a bit immune to it. You can die mentally so many times, and after that, it's whatever comes.
I had a twin sister then, and we were about 15 in 1942. We used to go off to the dances, which were absolutely crowded with Americans and coloured Americans, white Americans. And our mother and father didn't allow us to go dancing, in actual fact, so we had to find out what was on at the local cinema, find out all about the picture, toodle off to the dance, wait till the Americans came, which was usually about 10 o'clock or 10:15 when the pubs all closed. So we'd have 2 or 3 dances with them, then run home like hell and tell mother and father what a lovely picture it had been, and we used to get away with it.
We'd have Saturday night dances occasionally. We would have to send our 2.5-ton trucks into the various villages to bring the girls on base. A lot of the girls appreciated the fact that there was some food to be had that really didn't require any coupons. You didn't have to go in and find your own girl. If you waited around long enough, there'd be enough guys getting drunk that you could then pick your own, so to speak. It worked out real fine.
They frequently made their way down to the local recreation ground in Northampton Road, where the fair stands. And there were a couple of fields there that were notorious spots, which we boys found out about. And we would go down there early in the morning, especially Saturday or Sunday, to see what was left. You could find lighters, money, packets of cigarettes, other things. And the most peculiar of all was a pair of shoes and a pair of socks. left in a spot, and I often wonder the luckless owner must have been chased by some irate husband, perhaps.
One squadron commander became very perturbed about the number of females on base and issued the order that all the Saturday night visitors would have to be off the base by Wednesday morning. His ration count was being fouled up, and there wasn't enough seats in the base movie house to take care of the normal troops.
Captain Clark Gable, now stationed in Britain as gunnery instructor in the American Air Force, has said goodbye for the duration to £1,500 a week and signed a new contract with Uncle Sam. Any lady in the audience like to step up and be shot?
Pam Parker met Clark Gable. She drove a civilian petrol tanker and was forced to stop one day near Grafton Underwood because 2 bicycles were lying in the road.
So I thought, well, I better get up and get these out of the way. Got out of the lorry to get them out. 2 Americans came towards me with their arms outstretched, you know. So, of course, I went for them, as my husband had taught me to do a few punches, you know, straight from the shoulder, and I gave him one. Knocked him straight back into the hedge, on top of the other fella. I got down and picked the bicycles up, took them on top of them, and rode off to deliver my load. As I walked out from the office, who should walk out but Clark Gable, and he said, "Oh, is this the lady?" He said, "Oh, well," he put his arm around my shoulders and said, jolly good, you keep up the good work, keep them in order."
155 American servicemen based at Grafton Underwood married British girls, and the majority of these GI brides went to live in the States. Jim Weaver, who flew with the 92nd Bomb Group at Poddington, married a local girl, but they still live in England.
I did 35 missions, and I knew that I would be sent home, so I signed on for another lot.
I didn't want him to. I thought perhaps it'd better for him to go back home, and then I follow on later on, but he didn't want it that way.
We lived about 3 miles from the aerodrome where I flew from, and she more or less knew when we were flying because I should be missing that day, and she used to sort of count them back, and we weren't missing once or twice, but we were lucky and we got back eventually.
We did go back to the States. We lived in the States for 12 months. I went back as a GI bride on the SS Washington, and we stayed there for 12 months. And then I found I was expecting a baby, came back and had it, and I think they made us far too comfortable. Things went so well for us on this side, and we just stayed.
I think it's probably a good job that only a few of us married Americans. The ones I know who did marry them did land safely and have very nice homes and very nice environments. But I feel that some of us could have been fooled by it all.
Saturday, the 21st of May, and the Bishop of Peterborough greets Her Royal Highness Princess Alice at Grafton Underwood Parish Church. The 384th has commissioned a new window to honour their dead, and it's been made by British craftsmen.
In the name of God and in the faith of Jesus Christ, we, Douglas, Bishop of Peterborough, do dedicate this window and pray that we who now see through a glass darkly may then see face to face, that we who now know in part may then know even as also we are known. Through him who is the way, the truth, and the life, the same thy Son, our Saviour, Jesus Christ, to whom with thee in the unity of the Holy Ghost be all honour and glory, world without end. Amen.
the airfields are mostly derelict. There's something sad about them. And this picture we took, for instance, was almost like a mourning card, looking at the emptiness of the place. You could almost hear the people still there. My generation will never forget what the Americans did for England. We never shall. And we're quite sincere in that.
I lost something here. I keep coming back trying to find it. And I don't know what it is, but I think we all lost something here. And that's what we keep coming back for.